I never imagined that forgetting my cell phone at a restaurant would save me from ending my days locked away in a nursing home, while my own family picked apart my fortune like vultures over a carcass that was still breathing. But that September night, when I returned to Tuscany's, 20 minutes after our family dinner, a young waitress with frightened eyes locked the glass door behind me, brought a finger to her lips, and whispered in a trembling voice, "Mrs. Sterling, I need to show you something. The security cameras above your table recorded the entire conversation after you left, but promise me you won't faint when you see what they said about you." My 64 years had taught me that when someone warns you not to faint, you should probably sit down first. The waitress, whose name tag identified her as Danielle, guided me to the manager's small office in the back of the restaurant. Her hands shook as she turned on the computer monitor, where the security footage was queued up. "I'm so sorry," she said with tears in her eyes. "I know I shouldn't get involved, but my mother went through something similar, and I couldn't help her in time." I didn't understand what she was talking about until she pressed the play button. But before I continue, I want to extend a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment down below which city you're watching from. Now, let's continue. The screen showed the table where we had dined just half an hour earlier. I had just left, supposedly to catch an Uber home because I was feeling tired. In the image, my husband Ernest, my two children Sebastian and Caroline, and my daughter-in-law Monica remained seated. But the moment I disappeared from view, their expressions changed completely. Ernest, the man I had been married to for 15 years, the one who swore to love me in sickness and in health, raised his wineglass with a satisfied smirk. "Well, the old hag is gone. Now we can talk freely." My heart began to pound violently. Danielle offered me a chair, and I took it without being able to take my eyes off the screen. "Did she sign the papers?" asked Monica, my daughter-in-law, leaning forward with anxiety evident on her perfectly made-up face. "Not all of them yet," Ernest replied, "but she signed the durable power of attorney. That's enough to start transferring the properties into my name. Dr. Roberts will give me the certificate of cognitive decline, early onset dementia." I felt as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over me. Certificate of dementia? What were they plotting? My son Sebastian, the boy I had raised, for whom I had worked 18-hour days building my textile business to give him the best education, chimed in with a cold voice I had never heard before. "And the nursing home? Is everything arranged?" "Golden Haven Retirement has her room reserved," Ernest confirmed naturally, as if they were discussing a hotel reservation for a vacation. "We'll have her committed in 2 weeks. Once she's there, legally incapacitated, I'll have total control over all her assets. The main house, the 3 rental properties, the factory shares everything." Caroline, my daughter, the one who had always been closer to me, the one who called me dearest mom, spoke up. For a moment, I had hoped she would object, that she would defend her mother. "And the cash? The bank accounts?" My hopes shattered into a million pieces. "I already have access to 2 of the 3 main accounts," Ernest said. "The third requires her signature in person, but once she's declared incompetent, I can get a court order." Monica laughed, a high-pitched, cruel laugh. "I can't believe it was so easy. The old lady really trusts you, Ernest. She signed everything you put in front of her without even reading it." "Well," Ernest said with arrogance, "I've spent 15 years acting like the perfect husband. It was worth every second of pretending I cared. When I met Beatrice, I investigated her net worth. I knew if I married her and waited long enough, it would all be mine. This was always the plan." The world around me seemed to stop. 15 years. 15 years of marriage had been a calculated lie. I had married this man after being a widow for 10 years, believing I had finally found genuine companionship in my later years. What a fool I had been. In the video, Sebastian raised his glass to Mom, who is so graciously going to finance our future from her comfortable room at the nursing home. Everyone laughed. Everyone toasted. My own children. The blood of my blood. Danielle paused the video and looked at me with compassion. "There's more," she said quietly. "They talk for 20 minutes more about how they're going to split everything. Your husband has a mistress you'll learn about soon," he says. "Your children have already spent money they don't have yet, assuming this would all work." I didn't cry. Something inside me had turned as hard as steel. I looked at this young waitress who didn't know me at all, but who had risked her job to show me this. "Why?" I asked her. Why show me this? Her eyes filled with tears. Because no one showed my mother the signs. They locked her away 3 years ago. She died in that place 6 months later, alone and confused, while her second husband lived with his mistress in the house my mother had bought. I took her hand and squeezed it. Thank you, Danielle. You just saved my life. I left the restaurant that night with a copy of the video on a USB drive that Danielle handed me with trembling hands. As I walked to my car, my mind traveled back 40 years to when it all began. I needed to remember who I was before these traitors tried to steal not only my fortune, but my identity itself. My name is Beatrice Sterling, though that second last name now burned on my tongue like poison. I was 24 years old when I became a widow for the first time. My first husband, Robert Sterling, father of Sebastian and Caroline, died in an industrial accident at the factory where he worked as a supervisor. He left me with 2 small children, an unpayable mortgage, and $500 in the bank. Most women in my situation in 1984 would have moved back in with their parents, accepted welfare, or barely survived. I wasn't like most women. Robert and I had dreamed together of having our own business one day. He was no longer there to see it, but I would make that dream a reality for both of us. With Robert's life insurance money barely enough for 6 months of expenses, I bought a used industrial sewing machine and started making school uniforms in my garage. I worked from 5 a.m. until midnight, sewing while Sebastian and Caroline slept. My fingers bled from so much stitching, my back hurt constantly, but every uniform was a step toward independence. The first year, I sold my products door to door, visiting private schools, convincing principals that my uniforms were cheaper and better quality than the competition. The second year, I hired 2 seamstresses. The third year, I rented a small workshop. By the 5th year, I had 15 employees and contracts with 30 schools across the city. I never forgot to be a mother in the midst of all this. I woke my children, made them breakfast, took them to school, picked up my employees, worked all day, went back for my kids, helped them with homework, cooked them dinner, tucked them in with a story, and only then went back to the workshop to finish urgent orders. I slept 4 hours a night for years. Sebastian and Caroline never lacked for anything. They had a good education, clean clothes, abundant food, modest vacations. Every summer, I instilled in them values of hard work, honesty, gratitude, or at least I thought I did. At 35, my small workshop had become Sterling Textiles, a mid-sized factory with 120 employees. We no longer made just school uniforms, but also sportswear, corporate uniforms, and hospital textiles. I bought the factory building, bought modern machinery, and purchased 3 rental properties to ensure passive income. At 40, I was one of the most respected businesswomen in the city. I provided employment to 300 people, many of them single mothers like I had been. I paid fair wages and offered benefits far superior to what the law required. I created a daycare in the factory so my employees could work with peace of mind, knowing their children were close and well cared for. My children grew up seeing my example. Sebastian studied business administration. Caroline studied fashion design. I paid for private universities, cars when they graduated, trips abroad to broaden their horizons. When they turned 25, I gave each of them 10% of the company shares. Someday, I told them, this will be yours, but you have to earn it. You have to learn the business from the bottom up. Sebastian worked at the company for 2 years before getting bored and deciding he preferred to explore other opportunities. Caroline lasted 6 months. Neither showed the hunger, the determination, the passion that I had possessed. But I loved them anyway. They were my children. At 49, after 25 years of widowhood, I met Ernest Sanders at a business conference. He was an accountant, also a widower, 10 years my senior. He seemed kind, educated, respectful. He courted me for 2 years with patience, with flowers, with romantic dinners. He never pressured, never demanded. He seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not just my money. How naive I was. We married when I was 51. I signed a prenuptial agreement that protected my company and my main properties, but in the following years, I bought a new house for the 2 of us. I opened joint bank accounts. I acquired 2 more properties that we put in both our names. I trusted him completely. Ernest integrated into my life, into my family. He got along well with Sebastian and Caroline, or so it seemed. He attended family dinners, celebrated birthdays and Christmases with us. He acted like the considerate stepfather my adult children didn't really need, but whom I appreciated them accepting. During the last 15 years, I worked less, enjoyed life more, and delegated more responsibilities at my factory to trusted managers. I traveled with Ernest. I enjoyed my hard-earned money. I thought that finally, after decades of sacrifice, I deserved to rest a little. And while I rested, they planned to destroy me. Now, sitting in my car in front of the restaurant, with the USB drive clutched in my hand like a life preserver, it all made sense. The last 6 months had been full of signs I ignored, blinded by love and trust. My phone buzzed. A text from Ernest. "Did you get home okay, my love? I miss you." I looked at that message and felt nauseous. 15 years of my love, 15 years of kisses on the forehead, 15 years of perfectly acted lies. I replied, "Yes, I'm home. I'm tired. Going to sleep early. Love you." The last 2 words physically hurt to type, but I needed him to believe everything was normal, that I knew nothing. Because now that I knew the truth, I needed time to plan my next move. And Beatrice Sterling hadn't built an empire from scratch to let herself be defeated by a few greedy traitors. The war had just begun. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room of my house, that beautiful 2-story colonial I had bought for Ernest and me as a symbol of our new beginning, and mentally reviewed the last 6 months. Now, with the brutal clarity that betrayal provides, every strange incident, every seemingly innocent comment, every thoughtful suggestion took on a sinister meaning. It had all started in March, exactly 6 months ago. Ernest had come home with a folder of legal documents and an expression of rehearsed concern that I now recognized as pure theater. "My love," he had said, sitting next to me on the sofa, "I've been thinking. At our age, we should have everything in order. Powers of attorney, updated wills, that sort of thing. Just as a precaution, you understand? Trusting? Foolish?" Blind me, I had nodded. "You're right. It's responsible to think about these things. My lawyer prepared these documents," he had continued, passing me a thick folder. "I just need you to sign them. It's routine, just to ensure that if anything happens to you, I can handle your affairs without legal complications, and vice versa, of course." Of course. Except Ernest had no affairs to handle, no properties, no businesses, nothing other than a modest retired accountant's pension, and what I shared with him. I had signed the documents without reading them thoroughly. Ernest pointed out where to sign, explaining each section briefly with that soothing voice that now made me sick. And I signed General Durable Power of Attorney, Medical Power of Attorney, Authorization for Bank Account Access. I signed it all. "You're so trusting," Ernest had said, kissing my forehead. "That's what I love most about you." Now I knew that what he loved was my gullibility, my vulnerability, my stupidity. 2 weeks later, Sebastian had come to visit with Monica, his wife of 4 years. They had been unusually attentive that day. Monica had brought my favorite dessert, cheesecake. Sebastian had insisted on checking the light fixtures in the house because some seemed old and dangerous. During coffee, almost casually, Sebastian had said, "Mom, don't you think it's time you rested? You've worked for over 40 years. The factory practically runs itself with the managers you have. You should sell, enjoy your money, travel more." "I'm not ready to retire completely," I had replied. "The factory is my life." Monica had intervened with that syrupy voice she used when she wanted something. "But, Mom, Beatrice, think about your health. Stress isn't good at your age. You could have more time for yourself, for Ernest, for your grandkids when they come." Grandkids they never planned to give me. Now I understood. They were just words to manipulate me. I had rejected the idea, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Was I working too much? Should I delegate more? At 64, didn't I deserve to rest? In April, Caroline had organized a girls' lunch at an upscale bistro. She had invited 3 of her friends, all women in their 30s, vibrant and full of energy. Throughout the meal, they talked about spas, yoga retreats, cruises for seniors, and luxury retirement communities. "Mom," Caroline had said, "one of my friends has her mother in an incredible place. It's called Golden Haven. It's like a 5-star hotel, but with medical staff. Activities every day. Gourmet chef, beautiful suites. You should at least visit, just to see." "Why would I visit a place like that?" I had asked, confused. I don't need medical staff. I'm perfectly healthy. Caroline had backpedaled quickly. No, of course. I'm not saying you need it now. I'm just saying it's good to know what options exist for the future. You know, for the future they had planned for me. A future in a gilded cage while they ransacked my life. In May, Ernest had insisted I visit a new doctor. Dr. Roberts is excellent, he had said. A specialist in geriatric medicine. It would be good for you to get a full checkup. I had gone to the appointment because Ernest had been so insistent. Dr. Roberts, a man in his 50s with an empty professional smile, had asked me strange questions during the consultation. Have you noticed memory problems lately? Forgetting where you put things? Confused about dates or names? No more than anyone my age, I had replied. Sometimes I forget where I left my keys, but I always find them. He had typed something into his computer with a serious expression. And mood swings? Irritability? Trouble sleeping? I sleep perfectly fine, and I'm not more irritable than normal. More typing, more meaningful glances. He had administered basic cognitive tests, which I passed without issue, but throughout the process, I felt he was looking for something, waiting for me to fail. Now I understood why Ernest had asked him to prepare a false diagnosis of dementia and had probably paid him handsomely for it. In June, the incidents had begun, small things designed to make me appear confused or senile in front of witnesses. One evening, Ernest and I had gone to dinner with his children from his first marriage, people I barely knew. During dinner, Ernest had told a story about a trip we had supposedly taken to Cabo the previous year. Remember, honey? He had asked with a smile. When you almost lost your passport at the airport and we had to go back to the hotel to find it? I had frowned. We didn't go to Cabo last year, Ernest. Of course we did, my love. It was in February. You loved the hotel. You said they had the best margaritas you'd ever tasted. No, you're confused. In February, we were at the factory closing the annual inventory. Ernest had exchanged a look with his children, a look that clearly said, "See, she's losing her memory." "It's okay, love," he had said condescendingly, patting my hand. "Sometimes we all get confused with dates." But I wasn't confused. He was deliberately lying to make me appear disoriented in front of witnesses. There were more incidents like that. Keys lost and appearing in places I was sure I hadn't left them. Medical appointments Ernest said I had forgotten, but which had never been scheduled. Conversations he swore we'd had, but which I didn't remember because they never happened. Gaslighting, the modern word for old-fashioned psychological abuse. They were making me doubt my own mind, preparing the ground to declare me incapacitated. And worst of all, in July, I had signed more documents without reading them. Ernest had arrived with his lawyer saying it was just an update to the will. I had signed page after page while the lawyer pointed, and Ernest nodded with approval. "Everything is in order now," Ernest had said afterward, putting the documents in his briefcase. "Now we can rest easy." Easy is how he felt, knowing every signature brought me closer to his trap. Now, in my living room at 3 a.m., with the USB drive on the coffee table as physical evidence of his betrayal, I finally saw the full pattern. 6 months of meticulous preparation. 6 months of building a narrative of mental decline. 6 months of legal documents designed to give him total control. And I had facilitated every step, trusting like the lovesick fool I had been. But that fool had just woken up. And Beatrice Sterling, the woman who built an empire from nothing, was about to remind everyone exactly who she was. By 6 a.m., after 3 hours of going through every drawer, every folder, every document in my home office, the magnitude of the conspiracy left me breathless. I had found copies of papers I didn't even remember signing, hidden in the desk Ernest occasionally used in my house. The shameless man had stored evidence of his own crime under my own roof. The first document I found froze my blood, a quitclaim deed transferring ownership of my main house, the house I had bought with my money, with the sweat of 40 years of work. Now, it was in Ernest Sanders' name. Exclusively. The transfer had been recorded 3 months ago. 3 months during which I, the supposed owner, had no idea that legally, my own home no longer belonged to me. How was it possible? Then I saw my signature on the document, a signature I didn't recall placing, but examining it closer, I recognized the date. It was from those routine documents Ernest had presented to me in March. Between the power of attorney and the will updates, he had slipped in a property transfer, and I, trusting and stupid, had signed without reading. I continued searching. In a folder marked Taxes 2023, I found something even worse. Deeds for 2 of my 3 rental properties had also been transferred, one to Ernest's name, another to Sebastian's name. My own son, had accepted stolen property from his mother. Nausea forced me to sit down. I breathed deeply, waiting for the room to stop spinning. I couldn't afford the luxury of collapsing now. I needed to know exactly how deep the hole was that they had buried me in. In the back of the bottom drawer, hidden under old utility bills, I found a thick manila envelope. Inside was an official medical document with Dr. Roberts' letterhead. Dated just last week, it declared that Beatrice Sterling, age 64, presents clear and progressive signs of senile dementia, Alzheimer's type, early stage. Recommends supervised care in a controlled environment for her own safety and well-being. It was completely false. I didn't have dementia. My mind was as clear as ever. But this document, signed by a licensed physician, would be enough for a judge to declare me legally incompetent to handle my own affairs. I kept reading. Dr. Roberts cited episodes of temporal disorientation, short-term memory loss, confusion regarding recent events, and deterioration in the ability to make complex financial decisions. Every symptom was a lie, or rather, every symptom was the result of the fabricated incidents Ernest had orchestrated for months. Inside the same envelope, I found brochures for Golden Haven, the luxury nursing home Caroline had casually mentioned. But these weren't tourist brochures, they were admission documents. My name was already written in several fields. There was a contract pre-signed by Ernest as my legal representative under the power of attorney I had granted him. The monthly cost was $12,000 money to lock me up while they lived off my fortune. But what I found next was what finally transformed my shock into cold, calculated fury. A handwritten calendar in Ernest's handwriting. It was a detailed timeline. Sept 15. Family dinner. Early celebration. B signs final docs. Sept 20. Dr. Roberts delivers official certificate. Sept 25. File papers with judge. Obtain declaration of incapacity, conservatorship. Sept 30. Admit B to Golden Haven. Oct 1. Transfer main account to National Bank. Oct 5. Sell Sterling Textiles shares. Remaining 30% to Bia's name controlled by Ernest. Oct 15. File for divorce with incapacity declared. Get everything in settlement. Nov 1. Marry Valerie. Valerie. The name of his mistress, I assumed. The woman for whom he had acted as a loving husband for 15 years while meticulously planning my destruction. Beneath the calendar were photographs. Ernest with a woman in her 40s, blonde, elegant, kissing in a restaurant, hugging in what seemed to be her apartment. A photo of both looking at rings in a luxury jewelry store, the date on the back, 3 months ago. While I slept peacefully in my bed, believing I had a solid marriage, my husband was planning his future with another woman, a future financed entirely with my money. I took photos of every document with my cell phone. I needed evidence of all this before Ernest returned from his supposed golf tournament with friends. Another trip that I now suspected had been with Valerie. In another folder, I found bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize. Ernest had opened 3 accounts in his name using the power of attorney. In the last 6 months, he had transferred in small amounts to avoid raising suspicions nearly $200,000 from my accounts to his. $200,000 stolen systematically. And I hadn't noticed anything because I trusted that he handled our finances responsibly. I also found a document that made me understand my children's participation in all this. An agreement signed between Ernest, Sebastian, and Caroline. Dated 6 months ago, the document detailed how my assets would be divided once I was incapacitated and institutionalized. Ernest, the main house, bank accounts, and 40% of liquid assets. Sebastian, 30% of liquid assets plus 2 rental properties. Caroline, the remaining 30% plus the 3rd rental property. Sterling Textiles, shares to be sold and money divided proportionally. They had calculated everything down to the penny. My family had held meetings, negotiated percentages, put their greed in writing, as if they were discussing the inheritance of someone who had already died. Except I wasn't dead. I wasn't even sick. In that moment, sitting on the floor of my office, surrounded by evidence of the most elaborate betrayal I could imagine, I made a decision. I would not be the victim in this story. I would not end my days locked in a nursing home while these vultures fought over my bones. I had 1 week, according to Ernest's calendar, before they filed the papers with the judge. 1 week to counterattack. I put all the documents back exactly as I had found them. Ernest couldn't know that I knew. I needed the element of surprise. At 7 a.m., I called my personal lawyer, Harvey Connors, a man who had worked with me for 20 years and whom I trusted absolutely. His secretary told me he was in an early hearing but would call me as soon as he got out. While I waited, I made coffee and forced myself to eat breakfast. Though the food tasted like ash, I needed to maintain the appearance of normalcy. When Ernest returned from his trip, I had to be the same trusting, loving Beatrice I had always been. Harvey Connors returned my call at 9. "Beatrice, good morning. What can I do for you?" "I need to see you today, Harvey. It's urgent and absolutely confidential." There was a pause. Harvey knew me well enough to detect the gravity in my voice. "I'll be free at 2 p.m. Does my office work for you?" "Perfect." "And Harvey?" "No one can know about this meeting." "No one." "Understood." I hung up and looked at the clock. I had 5 hours before the meeting. 5 hours to organize my thoughts, gather all the evidence, and plan my counterattack. Beatrice Sterling hadn't gotten this far by letting herself be defeated by obstacles. And I certainly wasn't going to start now. War had been declared, and I intended to win. Chapter 5. Unexpected Allies. At 2 p.m. sharp, I was sitting across from the mahogany desk of Harvey Connors, with the USB drive, the photos of the documents, and a steel determination that he recognized immediately in my expression. Harvey was 68 years old, with completely white hair and a legal mind as sharp as a scalpel. He had represented me in every major contract of my business life for the last 2 decades. "Beatrice," he said with genuine concern, "in 20 years working with you, I've never seen you like this. What is going on?" I told him everything. From the moment I forgot my cell phone at the restaurant to the discovery of the documents in my own house that morning. I showed him the video of the family dinner, the timeline written by Ernest, the false medical diagnosis, the contracts dividing my assets. As I spoke, I watched his professional expression transform into pure indignation. "This is," he searched for the right words, "this is criminal conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by deception, forgery of medical documents, elder financial abuse. Beatrice, this isn't just a civil divorce case. This is criminal. Your husband and children could go to prison." "Good," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as my own, "because I want them to pay for every second of this betrayal." Before we continue, tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. Harvey leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers together as he thought, "We have solid evidence, but we need more. We need to record conversations, document every move they make. And above all, we need to protect your assets immediately before they realize you know something. What do you recommend?" "First, we are going to reverse all those property transfers. I can argue before a judge that they were obtained through fraud and deceit. Second, we are going to freeze all accounts where Ernest has access. Third, we are going to revoke every power of attorney you signed. And fourth," he paused significantly, "we are going to prepare a criminal complaint against all of them." I nodded, feeling control return to my hands. "How long will it take?" "If we act fast, I can have emergency court orders by tomorrow. But Beatrice, the moment we do this, they will know you've discovered everything. You must be prepared for the confrontation." "I am." We spent the next 3 hours reviewing every document, planning every legal move. Harvey called a judge he trusted and scheduled an emergency hearing for the next day. He also contacted a private investigator to document Ernest and Valerie's movements. When I left his office, it was almost 6 p.m. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Ernest. I took a deep breath and called him back, forcing my voice to sound normal, loving. "Hi, my love. Sorry, I was at the supermarket and didn't hear the phone." "Don't worry, honey. I just wanted to let you know I'll be late today. A last-minute meeting with a potential client." Lies. He was probably with Valerie. "Sure, no problem. I'll leave some dinner out for you. You're the best. Love you." The words burned my throat, but I said them anyway. "I love you too." I hung up, and allowed myself a moment of nausea before composing myself. I still had to act for 24 more hours. When I arrived home, I found someone waiting for me on the porch. It was Danielle, the waitress from the restaurant. She looked nervous, twisting her hands. "Mrs. Sterling, forgive me for showing up at your house like this. I got your address from, well, it doesn't matter how. I needed to talk to you." "Come in, Danielle. Do you want a coffee?" We sat in the kitchen, and she finally told me her full story. Her mother, Mercedes, had been the victim of an almost identical scheme 3 years ago. Her mother's second husband, along with Danielle's own brother, had declared her incompetent and locked her in a nursing home. Mercedes had died 6 months later of a broken heart, according to the doctors, though Danielle believed it was from despair. "When I heard your family's conversation in that video," she said with tears in her eyes, "it was like reliving my mother's nightmare. But this time, I could do something. This time I could warn someone in time." I took her hand. "You saved my life, Danielle, literally. There's something else you should know," she continued. "After you left last night, I kept investigating on my own. I have a friend who works in public records. I asked him to look up information on Patricia Ruiz. Sorry, I meant Valerie Reese, the woman in the photos with your husband." "Valerie Reese? Who is she?" "It turns out she has a record." My heart began to beat faster. "What kind of record?" Danielle pulled out her phone and showed me old newspaper articles. 8 years ago, in another city, Valerie Reese was arrested for conspiracy to defraud an elderly man. She married him, convinced him to transfer his properties to her name, and then left him with nothing. The case was dismissed due to lack of sufficient evidence, but several witnesses testified she had done the same with at least 2 other men. "She's a professional con artist," I whispered, feeling the pieces fit together. "Exactly. And I think your husband isn't the mastermind here. I think she recruited him, taught him the plan, and is using Ernest to get to your fortune. He's just a tool." That explained a lot. Ernest wasn't particularly intelligent or manipulative by nature, but under the tutelage of an experienced grifter. "Do you have copies of these articles?" I asked. "All saved. And there's more. I found a record that Valerie was married briefly 5 years ago to another man, also older and wealthy. He died of a heart attack 6 months after the wedding. She inherited everything. Authorities investigated, but found no evidence of foul play." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you think she killed him?" "I don't have proof. But the pattern is clear. She finds older men with money, marries them or manipulates them to give her access to their fortunes, and then disappears with everything. Your husband Ernest fits the pattern perfectly, except he doesn't have money of his own, so she's using him to get yours." I looked at this 26-year-old waitress who had done more investigation in 24 hours than I had in 15 years of marriage. "Danielle, what are you doing working in a restaurant? You should be a detective." She smiled sadly. "After what happened to my mother, I tried to study law to help other victims, but I don't have money for college. The restaurant pays the bills." An idea began to form in my mind. "Would you like to work for me?" "What?" "I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who understands the stakes. Someone with your investigative skills and determination." I leaned forward. "I'm going to dismantle this conspiracy piece by piece. And when it's all over, I'm going to create a foundation to help victims of elder financial abuse. I'll need someone to run it, someone like you." Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "Are you serious?" "Completely. But first, I need your help to win this war." She wiped her tears, and her expression hardened with determination. "Tell me what you need me to do." We spent the next 2 hours planning. Danielle would install hidden cameras in strategic places in my house while Ernest wasn't there. She would also teach me how to use an app on my phone to record conversations discreetly and would continue investigating Valerie, looking for more evidence of her past crimes. "There's something else," Danielle said before leaving. "In the restaurant, there are cameras in various areas, not just over the tables. If your family has dined there before, we could review old files, see if there are more compromising conversations. We've dined there at least once a month for the last year." Danielle smiled. "Then we have a lot of material to review." After she left, I sat in my living room and looked around the house that was no longer legally mine but soon would be again. And when I was done with them, Ernest, my children, and especially Valerie, they would wish they had never heard the name Beatrice Sterling. The phone rang. It was Sebastian. "Mom, How are you? We haven't spoken in days. Liar. He knew exactly how long it had been because he was avoiding me while preparing my destruction. I'm fine, son. And you? Great. Hey, Monica and I want to invite you to dinner next weekend. What do you say? Another dinner. Probably to make me sign more documents. I'd love to, I said with the sweetest voice I could manufacture. When I hung up, I smiled. A cold, calculated smile. Let them come. Let them proceed with their plan. Because I had mine, and mine was better. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., an hour before Ernest returned from his business trip with Valerie. Danielle arrived at 5:30, dressed as a cable technician, with a briefcase full of tiny cameras and microphones the size of a coin. In 90 minutes, we had installed devices in the living room, dining room, Ernest's home office, and our bedroom. Everything records to the cloud automatically, Danielle explained as she finished hiding the last camera inside a decorative clock. You can access it from your phone at any time, and if they discover one camera, the others will keep working. You're amazing, I told her sincerely. This is for my mom, she replied with a firm voice, and for all the people like you who deserve justice. She left just in time. At 7 a.m., I heard Ernest's car in the driveway. I took a deep breath, put on my robe, and went down to make coffee as if it were a normal morning. Good morning, my love, Ernest said, kissing my cheek. He smelled of women's perfume. He hadn't even bothered to shower before coming home. Did you sleep well? Like a baby, I lied, forcing a smile. And your trip? How was the conference? He hesitated for just a second, but I noticed. Productive, very productive. I made several important contacts. Yes, I thought. Very intimate contacts with Valerie. During breakfast, Ernest checked his phone constantly, typing messages with a smile on his lips, probably to her. Fury bubbled inside me, but I kept my expression serene, almost bored. Honey, he said finally, I need you to sign one last document today. It's for next year's taxes. Just a formality. Here it was, the last document before executing his plan. Of course, I said sweetly. Do you have it here? He pulled a paper from his briefcase. I looked at it briefly. It was an authorization for him to sell assets in my name without my additional approval. The final nail in my financial coffin. Can I read it first? I asked casually. I saw a flash of panic in his eyes. It's quite technical, love. My accountant already reviewed it. Just sign here and here. Still, I'd like to read it. You're not in a hurry, are you? Ernest clenched his jaw but forced a smile. No, of course not. Take your time. I pretended to read the document slowly while sipping my coffee. I knew exactly what it said, but I needed to act like the trusting wife I had always been. After 5 interminable minutes, I picked up the pen, and then I dropped the bomb I had carefully planned. You know, Ernest, I've been thinking, maybe we should sell the house. He nearly spat out his coffee. What? Why? It's too big for the two of us. And with my age, the stairs are getting difficult. We could buy a smaller, more manageable apartment. Or maybe move into one of those retirement communities Caroline mentioned. I saw him calculate quickly. If I sold the house now, before he could execute his plan, everything would get complicated. No, my love, he said quickly. This house is perfect. We don't need to move. But I thought you'd agree. After all, the house is already in your name according to those papers I signed, right? The silence that followed my question was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Ernest had frozen completely, coffee cup suspended halfway between the table and his lips. His eyes stared at me with a mix of surprise and rising panic. What did you say? He managed to articulate finally. The papers I signed in March, I repeated with an innocent voice, though my heart beat like a war drum. You said they were just routine powers of attorney, but I reviewed my copies yesterday and saw there was a property transfer deed. The house is in your name now, right? I watched his brain work at full speed, searching for a plausible explanation. Ah, yes, that's just for tax purposes, my love. The accountant suggested it would be better for taxes. But the house is still yours, obviously. Obviously, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air like a veiled accusation. Ernest put the cup down abruptly. You know what? You're right about that document. I better check it again with the accountant before you sign it. No rush. He stood up quickly. I have to make some calls, meetings to coordinate. I watched him go up the stairs with hurried steps. As soon as he closed his office door, I pulled out my phone and opened the hidden camera app. The camera in his office had a perfect angle. I saw him dial a number with trembling hands. I activated the audio. "Valerie, we have a problem," he said with a tense voice. "Beatrice just mentioned the house transfer. I think she's starting to suspect something." I couldn't hear her response, but I saw his expression become more distressed. "No, I don't think she knows everything. But she's asking questions. What if she decides to investigate?" Pause. You're right. We need to accelerate the plan. I'll call Dr. Roberts today. The sooner we declare her incompetent, the better." Longer pause. "Yes, the kids are ready. Sebastian already prepared the documents to file with the judge. Everything is ready for Friday." "No, she suspects nothing about you. She doesn't even know you exist." A bitter laugh. 15 years of acting are about to pay off, my love. By next month, we'll be together with all her money." I cut the recording. I had what I needed. At 2 p.m., I had my emergency meeting with Judge Moreno in his chambers, accompanied by Harvey Connors. I showed him all the evidence. The video of the family dinner, the recordings of Ernest with Valerie, the fraudulent transfer documents, the false medical diagnosis, Danielle's investigation into Valerie's criminal record. Judge Moreno, a 70-year-old man with a reputation for being strict but fair, took off his glasses after reviewing everything. "Mrs. Sterling, this is one of the most elaborate cases of conspiracy to commit fraud I have seen in my 40 years on the bench. Are you sure you want to proceed with criminal charges against your husband and your own children?" "Completely sure, Your Honor." "Then we will proceed as follows. I am going to issue emergency orders to reverse all property transfers obtained through fraud. I am going to freeze all bank accounts involved. I am going to revoke every power of attorney you signed. And I am going to issue arrest warrants for Ernest Sanders, Sebastian Sterling, Caroline Sterling, Monica Reese, and Valerie Reese for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by deception, forgery, and financial elder abuse. Thank you, Your Honor." "There is one more thing I want to do," Judge Moreno continued. "I want this confrontation to happen in the most public and humiliating way possible for them, as a warning to others who might think of committing similar crimes. Do you have a suggestion?" A slow smile spread across my face. "Actually, yes. This Friday, Sebastian invited me to dinner. The whole family at Tuscany's the same." Judge Moreno smiled for the first time. "Poetic justice. I like it. I will coordinate with the police to be present. And Mrs. Sterling, if I may make a suggestion, record the entire dinner. Let them talk. Let them feel safe. And when they are in the middle of their early celebration, then the hammer will drop." "Can I invite some people?" I asked. "Witnesses who deserve to be present." "Of course. The more public, the better." During the next 3 days, I played the role of my life. I was the sweet, trusting Beatrice I had always been. Ernest, believing he had avoided disaster when I backed off about selling the house, relaxed again. The hidden cameras captured 3 more conversations between him and Valerie, each more incriminating than the last. Thursday night, Caroline called to confirm dinner on Friday. "Mom, we're all excited to see you. It's been so long since we had a full family gathering." "I'm excited too, daughter," I said. And for the first time in days, I wasn't lying. Friday arrived. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one Ernest always said made me look elegant. I did my makeup carefully. I put on the pearls I had bought with my first big business profit. If I was going to witness the fall of my enemies, I would do it with style. Danielle had reserved the same private table for me where they had celebrated my future imprisonment. The manager of the restaurant, now aware of what had happened in his establishment, had cooperated completely. The security cameras were all working. He had set up a projector and a screen for a special presentation. I arrived first, as planned. At 7 p.m. on the dot, my family began to arrive. Sebastian and Monica first smiling and fake. Then Caroline with her husband Michael, who looked uncomfortable, probably the only one who wasn't fully in on the plan. And finally, Ernest, smelling again of that foreign perfume, kissing my cheek with lips that had kissed another woman hours before. "You look beautiful, Mom," Caroline said. "Are we celebrating something special?" "You could say that," I replied with an enigmatic smile. We ordered food, drank wine, talked about trivialities. They were relaxed, confident. Sebastian asked me casually about those tax documents Dad Ernest mentioned. "Ah, yes," I said. "Actually, that's part of what I wanted to discuss tonight." I saw them exchange glances. They thought I was finally going to sign everything they needed. "But first," I continued, signaling the manager, "there is something everyone needs to see." The manager dimmed the lights and turned on the projector. On the large screen appeared the video of the dinner from 2 weeks ago, the video where they planned my destruction. I watched the color drain from their faces. I saw the pure panic in Ernest's eyes. I saw Sebastian stand up abruptly. "Mom, I can explain." "Sit down, Sebastian," I said with a voice of ice, "and watch what you did." I let the video play in full. Every poisonous word, every cruel laugh, every detail of their betrayal. When it finished, the lights came on, and there, at the entrance of the private room, stood 6 police officers with Judge Moreno behind them. Ernest Sanders, Sebastian Sterling, Caroline Sterling, Monica Reese, the commanding officer said, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by deception, and elder financial abuse. You have the right to remain silent." Chapter 8. Justice and Rebirth. 6 months later, I stood in front of a newly inaugurated building in the city center. The sign above the entrance read, Beatrice Sterling Foundation, Center for Protection Against Elder Financial Abuse. Beside me was Danielle, now dressed in a professional suit, holding the keys to the building with a radiant smile. "Ready, boss?" she asked me. "More than ready," I replied, and together we cut the ribbon before the press cameras and a crowd of people who had come to support the cause. The months after that dinner had been a legal whirlwind. Ernest, Sebastian, Caroline, and Monica faced trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the recordings, the forged documents, everything. Dr. Roberts was also arrested for medical fraud and lost his license permanently. Ernest received 8 years in federal prison. Sebastian and Monica, 6 years each. Caroline, who eventually cooperated with the prosecution and confessed she had been pressured by the others, received 3 years of probation and community service. Her husband, Michael, divorced her 2 months after the arrest. But the real prize was Valerie Reese. Danielle's investigations had uncovered an entire network of similar frauds across 4 different states. It turned out the man who died of a heart attack 5 years ago had been slowly poisoned with digoxin, according to an exhumation ordered by the court. Valerie faced homicide charges in addition to multiple counts of fraud. She would receive life in prison without the possibility of parole. All my properties were returned to my name. I recovered every penny Ernest had stolen, plus punitive damages. I kept my factory, my investments, everything. But most importantly, I recovered my dignity. The divorce from Ernest was quick and definitive. The prenup I had signed 15 years ago held valid. He received absolutely nothing except public shame and a prison cell. As for my children, that was the deepest pain. Sebastian never apologized, never showed remorse. I visited him once in prison, and he looked at me with eyes full of resentment, as if I were the villain of this story. I never went back. Caroline did apologize, crying, begging forgiveness. She said Monica had convinced her that she was afraid to oppose them. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive her, but at least she tried to make amends. Time will tell. Today, standing in front of my foundation, surrounded by lawyers, social workers, and victims of abuse who would now have a safe place to seek help, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Danielle had turned out to be an exceptional director. We had helped 14 families in the first 3 months of operation, saving seniors from situations similar to mine. "Mrs. Sterling," an older woman said, approaching timidly, "I want to thank you. My son was trying to do to me what they did to you, but thanks to your foundation, I was able to stop him in time." I hugged her as she wept on my shoulder. "That's why we're here," I told her. "So no one else suffers alone." That night, back in my house, legally and in every sense, I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted to myself. Beatrice Sterling, 65 years old, survivor, fighter, victorious. I had lost my family, but I had gained something more valuable: my freedom, my power, and a renewed purpose. And that, I discovered, was worth more than all the gold in the world. Here ends my story, the story of how Beatrice Sterling refused to be buried alive by her own family. But before you go, I need to ask you a very special favor. If my story moved you, if you felt the rage I felt when I discovered the betrayal, if you celebrated with me when justice finally arrived, please subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell. There are many more stories like mine that need to be told. Stories of women and men who refuse to surrender. Like this video if you believe I did the right thing by reporting my husband and my own children. Your like helps more people find these stories of justice and overcoming. And now I want to hear from you. Comment down below which city or country you are listening from. It excites me to know that my story reaches so many places in the world, that we are not alone in our battles. Also, I want to know, what would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven your children? Would you have gone all the way like I did? Your comments help me understand how these stories resonate with you. If you know someone going through a similar situation, share this video. You never know who might need to hear that it is possible to defend oneself, that dignity is worth more than keeping the peace at any cost, that it is never too late to fight for what is yours. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for listening to my full story, for not judging me, for understanding that sometimes the greatest love we can give is loving ourselves enough to set boundaries even with family. At 65, I learned that true family isn't just blood. It's the people who respect you, who value you, who would stand by your side regardless of how much money you have or don't have. Danielle turned out to be more family to me than my own children. See you in the next story. Take care of yourselves. Value yourselves always. And remember, never, ever allow anyone, family or not, to steal your dignity. Until next time, and may justice always be on your side.